Welcome to the Worship Server Podcast. It is so good to have you here. Travis and I always appreciate you being here and tuning in and taking some time out of your day to hopefully be encouraged and grow into your craft and the things that God has called us to do. As I've already said your name, Travis, but my name is Blaze Nelson and I'm here with my co-host. How are you doing today, Travis?
I'm doing good. Excited to talk about today's topic.
Sweet. Cool. Before we jump into it, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you could give us a like or follow, 5 stars, review, anything like that would be super helpful in getting the word out about the podcast and about what we're doing here. It doesn't mean a ton to us. I mean, we would always appreciate to hear feedback, but it could just help get a little bit of momentum going, and that would be a huge blessing. And we always start out every podcast saying this. I think it's valuable to say, but Travis and I are not experts in our field, but we have been doing it a long time. We're two guys that really love the local church, really love worship, worshiping God and leading our congregations into that event. And we're not pretending to have all the answers for your church. We're not pretending to have, if you don't listen to us, then you're doing it wrong. None of that pretense. We're just two guys having a conversation here and are hoping to spur and encourage each other on, and hopefully you, dear listener. So thanks for being along with the ride. And we're also not super interested in building a audience. We're interested in building community. So if you'd like to join us in this conversation or in other conversations, we're currently on the platform called Discord. You can jump in at theworshipserver.com/Discord, or we're going to have a link in the show notes below. So I think that's all of it. All of that out of the way. What are we doing today, Travis?
So last episode, we were talking about youth bands, building into youth bands, how to lead teenagers, handing off real responsibility instead of just letting kids stand on stage and like looking the part or whatever. But towards the end of the episode, you asked a question that I kind of waved off a little bit because we were running out of time. And that question was basically, what about the worship leader themselves? Like, what about you as you're developing other people? What about you? What if you're still developing? What do you do to hone your craft? And so I've been thinking about that question ever since, and we just decided to do an episode on it. But this one really, it's about honing your own craft. Like, what do you do to make yourself better? And we might talk about metronomes and chord charts and signal path and gain structures, stuff like that. That's a little different maybe than previous episodes where we probably focused a little bit more on the heart posture, the spiritual posture of worship leading. So I wanted to start off by maybe giving a little disclaimer that the craft, these logistics are not the point. They're in service of something much bigger, and that is our goal to help the church worship God. But that craft does actually have to be there for that service to happen. So that's where we want to go today. And as we talked about that a little bit in preparation, Blaze, you kind of had a couple categories that we're thinking about, and we'll just kind of riff off of it from there. Why don't you introduce those?
Yeah. So as I was thinking about it, and part of this came from just some of this content I've been consuming at the Worship Initiative /Solo. They recently changed the name, but one of the things that Robbie C says a lot is that he used to think that being on stage was like 90% of his job as a worship leader, and like dealing with all the other ministry stuff was 10%. And as he's gotten older, he's realized that that's actually flipped, that the 10% is the musician stuff on stage, and the 90% is being just a minister of music, or a worship pastor, whatever your title is. There's a lot of skill that goes into doing that piece effectively. So I think we're going to start with this idea of what it takes to be a musician and to lead a band, which is not a skill that I don't think you really develop that in anywhere else than in a church environment like this. And then we'll eventually land kind of more ministry skills and things that we can be developing. And yeah, I think just to pause. I'm sure I've said something similar on a previous episode, but I've really come to believe that if a worship leader can have great lights, great music, amazing songs, perfect things that he's saying in between songs, and you could have two guys doing the exact same thing, And I think one guy's heart could be honoring to God, and I think one guy's heart would be dishonoring to God. And just as we jump into this topic, as you've already alluded to, Travis, I think in general, God's way more interested in how we treat each other. God's way more interested in your heart posture. God's way more interested in you being submitted and gospel filled than you playing an excellent guitar solo. So,
Yes.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
just to put this in the right spot, which I think, just if you go back to the whole of what we've been doing here on the podcast, I think you'll see this is in the right spot. But just even in this episode, the right spot first is your heart posture, your relationship with God. Are you known in your church? Are you struggling with hidden sin that you haven't confessed? All of those things, all of that's way more important. But as musicians, we like to talk about all the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts stuff. And so, don't if there's bigger things going on in your life, stop listening to the podcast, go do something else. Maybe start working on some of that heart posture stuff and then come back and we'll talk nuts and bolts, which I think we're
Yeah.
both excited to do.
Yeah, it's not wrong to talk about musical logistics, but sometimes we can overly focus on, man, I'm just talking about my pedal board all the time and I forgot about leading worship.
Yeah.
So but there's a tension there because, I think you need to be developing your craft. Um, but at the same time, like there's a tension in you're also needing to lead worship right now, right? Because
Yeah.
the
Yep.
church needs a worship leader this Sunday and you're it. Right. So both things can be true. Like you're developing and you're there leading. So you need to feel permission to lead while you're growing. Um, but I do think like in the category, what you were just saying is be honest about where you're at. Right. Don't try to pretend to have a competency that you don't have, maybe. Um, Lead with what you've got, but commit to growing in it. And I think maybe there's a heart posture there or a scriptural pattern even where God he uses people who are faithful with what they've got, I think, while simultaneously learning to carry more. That's a pretty good pattern in scripture that he doesn't call somebody who's ready. Moses protested a lot, maybe probably too much, but he certainly didn't feel ready, when God called him. Jeremiah, right off the bat, he's like, I'm way too young for this. I'm too inexperienced. Um, the disciples following Jesus around for 3 years and Jesus just kept building them and building them and building them, over time. And so I think, it's good to keep developing, um, grow, but also do it while you're leading right now. So there's probably dangers on either side of that cliff. One, maybe you're just not feeling like you're qualified to lead, and so you don't. Maybe you should. But there's probably another side of that where you could just focus on the worship leading aspect of it, the spiritual part of it, and just not develop as a musician. I've seen a lot of musicians just sort of plateau because they just kind of stopped caring about where they were at. So lead and grow.
I think an interesting piece of this is that God's heart is for us to play skillfully. Um, just as you were saying, I've heard a lot of people or have gotten the vibe from people of like, eh, like this isn't a big deal. I'm just going to come in and play the chords. We're going to pick the songs on Sunday morning. We're going to not have any practice and we'll just let God take our loaves and fishes and we'll be good. Um, and I think there's something a little bit more that God would have. And I think the heart's more important, but then I also think to balance that out, in scripture, you see men like Bezalel and Aholiab, which, they don't get a lot of credit in the Bible, but these are the guys that they're the first recorded gifting of the Spirit in scripture. And they're the men that God chose. He says they're gifted in their crafts and in teaching others, and he chose them to build the tabernacle. And so what's even interesting is that there can be a spiritual element to your gifting here. I think when I think of spiritual gifts, I think of like the list that we have in, is it Corinthians? I think that's where the list is. There other places, there's places. Go
Yeah,
look them up.
there are
Um,
places.
but there's definitely beyond that. There's a spiritual gifting of like, hey, these guys are skilled at what they do, and then even beyond that, they're skilled at teaching others. So that's
Yes.
always kind of a fascinating little nugget for me too. And then I think of Psalm 33:3. there's that command to sing to the Lord, play skillfully in his presence. Proverbs 22:29. Do you see man skilled in his work? He will serve before kings, he will not serve before obscure men. And so there is this heart that God has. You see David in Chronicles like really picking these guys that could lead well and that were excellent musicians and they were songwriters and they were bringing the liturgy to Israel, and we get the benefit of having those still recorded in the Psalms, a lot of them. Um so I think musical excellence is also near and dear to God's heart as well, and to neglect that I think is missing part of our calling here.
Yeah. I wonder for people who, you think, oh, I'm trying to be spiritual. You can kind of lose the fact that sitting in your basement, like working on a metronome exercise for the sake of your tempo, like it doesn't feel like a spiritual thing, but I think it is, right? It might just feel mechanical, but it just maybe just feels like work and disconnected from actually worshiping. But I just think when you spend time on that and you're developing in that and you're investing in your ability to like serve the church well, so I think of Colossians 3:23, whatever you do, work at it with all of your heart as working for the Lord. And as worship leaders, I think you have to put in that category of that working for the Lord, the unglamorous work of doing some scales and getting better at your instrument. So honing some excellence in your craft is actually a form of love for God and love for the church. It's service. It's service. And then therefore it's worship, right? So listening to a metronome, think of it as worship. It might feel mundane, but just don't discount that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and it's hard to see that. It's
Right.
hard to put yourself in that when you're like, if you haven't had the experience of like restarting a YouTube video to the same spot over and over again to get the piece that you're working on down,
Yep.
then
Yep.
you get going. But that's just part of it, is like this mundane, like, man, I'm gonna grind this out and gonna work on these parts. So
Have you ever pulled a track into a program like Audacity or Pro Tools or something and actually slowed it down while keeping the pitch the same just so you can learn a lead part?
no, when I was in high school, my guitar teacher had us use a program called Tux Guitar, which was open source at the time. I'm not sure if it's still, like, I don't know if you're going to go download this and get tons of viruses, but it was basically MIDI, and you could pump in or sheet music into the platform, and then you could slow it down and practice with the metronome as you learn these pieces.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I've done that, but nothing quite as fancy as like pulling track stems and sticking them in different things.
Yeah. Yeah. Just trying to slow it down. Like, what is that third note? Every time it comes back around, it's just too fast. I can't hear
Oh,
it.
I just agonizingly reset it over and over again, and
Yep. Yep. Back to beginning. Back to beginning. So, before we get too far into that, what are there pieces of the craft that we would maybe put in an order of like competency that we want to talk about?
mm, I think your personal musicianship is kind of what immediately comes to my mind. Um, yeah, so I think where we want to go, personal musicianship, ability to communicate with other members in your team. Um, there's dynamics there, but I think, yeah, I think both are equally important, but maybe personal musicianship is an easier place to start.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in that, I mean, if you, I always go back to the heart posture in that. Um, I've known worship leaders who, weren't actually all that interested in music per se. Like they really liked the spiritual side of leading the church and could sing and had some competency. I do think it is important for you to stay passionate about music,
Yeah,
stay inspired, you know, um, listen to new songs, share music with people. Like you have to care a little bit about the music. If you're not really that type of person, it might be that, your heart for leading the church towards God could be better served in a different place. Maybe you need to lead a Bible study or be on the hospitality team or, something like that. Right. Or be in the back line. Maybe.
yep. Yeah,
Um,
I was reading
Go
Worship
ahead.
Matters by Bob Coughlin, and he was saying that there could be a time where you the skill of the team kind of outgrows where you're at or somebody on your team, and you might need to ask them to step down. And I kind of think of that with like the heart of, man, I'm not super interested in music. It doesn't really like click for me. You know, maybe the church really needs you right now, and maybe this is the place that God has for you. Um, just be open to the possibility that there could be a time when you look around and go, "Oh, I'm like holding back the worship ministry right now, and so maybe I need to take a step back."
Yeah. Yeah.
And both are fine.
Yeah. Totally.
I don't think you have to like love music to serve the church, but I do think that's really helpful. It is interesting because I can have a real love hate relationship with music. Um, I remember when I was in high school and I was working to be on the worship team. My dad is our pastor, and he said, "Hey, if you want to be on the worship team, I want you to practice 3 hours a day." And so I did that
It's a lot.
as part of my schooling program. I was homeschooled, so I had some flexibility there. Um, and I did that for probably 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, something like that. Um, and yeah, probably wasn't as effective as it could have been. I did learn a ton. I did grow a ton as a musician, but you know, it was an interesting balance of like, I wasn't like, man, I love this. And I think there's guys that like pick up the guitar all the time and play and are working on things. And I think as I've grown, have picked that love back up where I'll just like most afternoons I'll just grab my guitar on the way out the door while my girls are playing out in the backyard, and I'll just go sit out in the backyard and just strum the guitar. And so I think I have a real love for playing the instrument, but I'm not sure if it came from the trauma of being forced to sit with it for so long, or I genuinely love the instrument. I'm not sure what the motivator is there, but just
Yeah.
recognize that that could be a little complex.
Yeah. That actually is interesting. Like you're going to approach music from different directions. Everybody's going to. What is it that you love about music? Uh, it may be different from another musician or another worship leader. Um, I think you actually may be more guitar focused than I am, which you wouldn't know it by what's on the wall behind me. Uh, I love guitar. It just happens to be the instrument of my competency, partly just because of my background in playing music. But it is not the first thing I care about in music when I listen to music.
Interesting.
Like I am more of like in terms of music, I'm more of a producer and arranger than I am an instrumentalist. I've developed competency simply because I'm also singing. I love being the front man. I love singing. I love the overall feel of music, and I love what it feels like when the band is really tracking together. That's my favorite thing. So when I listen to a mix, I listen for the good mix. I listen to the whole thing. I wasn't that teenager who was like, I love guitar, and so I'm going to learn all the guitar riffs because I love guitar. It was, I have a guitar and I love music, and I'm learning all of these riffs because they fit with this thing that I'm doing with bands.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I like producing the band.
Yeah. That's cool. And there's different skill sets there, right? Like
Yes.
I've wanted to grow as a producer recently. It's like we were just talking before we hit record. I would love to understand compressors better because it's been years and I still don't fully get what they do. Um, or like EQ, you know? So there's what's interesting is I think identify the craft that you're really engaged in and then enjoy it. Like do things as you were
Yes.
saying, just do things that inspire you in that craft. Um, for me, I this isn't a full-hearted endorsement, but like I watched that pedal show, as obviously you do as well with the t-shirt. Um, and one of the things I love about watching that pedal show is that when Dan plays, it makes me want to pick up a guitar.
Totally.
And it just there's something Mick too. I'm not trying to pick a favorite here, but there's something about when like he hits the notes and it just like it just gravitates, it grabs my heart a little bit like, oh, that's awesome. I felt something when he's
Mhm.
just like noodling. Um,
Yeah.
and so, try to find things that like really spark your passion of like, oh man, this is sick. If you
Yeah.
haven't said this is
Yeah.
sick about your craft in a little bit, go find something that's sick about your craft and like be excited about it.
Totally. Totally. So if I were to, and you can correct me maybe, um, like when you're thinking about the craft of music, so I'm sort of booming, like zooming this out
Yeah,
past
yeah.
just guitar or
Yep.
just singing.
Ha-
As a worship leader, as a band leader, um, sort of maybe a rough order of importance. The thing I'd put at the top, at least this is my opinion, I would put time. Like, what's your tempo? You have to be able to keep time first and foremost, especially with other people. Um, I think second, I would say theory. You need to understand music theory. You don't need a music degree, but you at least need to understand like what a key is and what chords in a key are, what the relative minor is, how to read a chord chart, and unlock so many things. Related to that, I think you need to be able to transpose pretty quickly. So that'd be three. Um, we talked about this a little bit as we were preparing for this episode, but listening, developing your ear, maybe one of the hardest things to develop, but it also may be one of the most important. Maybe my importance, list here is a little off, but
yeah, yeah.
can you hear when the bass player and the kick drum lock in versus when they don't? Can you hear when the keys are stepping on the guitar frequency space or, things like that? Like developing your active listening. Um, I think as a worship leader and a band leader, you need to develop a vocabulary. So you're going to need to have words that describe what you hear. Words that are not like, make this sound more purple. It's a little bit fuzzy, but it's got like some triangular edges. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? If you can't name it and have it be understood, you're not going to be able to coach it. Um, I do think it's important for a worship leader, and some people could argue because I do know worship leaders who just cannot do any of this, but you need to have some technical literacy. You know, the basic signal chain. Where does sound start and where does it end up, and what's happening in between? Um, how to get a monitor mix to sound right. Plugging in cables. If you're technically illiterate, you're putting all of the weight of that onto your tech, like your sound tech, who usually are volunteers under you needing your direction. So unless you've got a really competent person there, you're going to need to get some sort of technical literacy. I think that we can go back and like pick apart some of these. I'm just trying to list
Yeah.
out flow of consciousness here. Um, Literacy related to that is just multi-instrument literacy. So you don't have to learn how to play drums, but you need to know enough about drums to be able to say, hey, the kick is fighting with the bass.
Yeah.
Simplify your pattern. Um, enough about the bass guitar to say, hey, just stay on the chord root during this pre-chorus. If you're moving around, it's too complicated, things like that. And know enough about electric guitar to say like, um, I don't like the swell on that, or your delay's a little off, or something like that. Um, I think those are probably the core things I would think about. Maybe the last one that comes to mind is just developing restraint. There's a musical maturity that a good band leader has. Just because you can play something doesn't mean you should. And maybe the best musical decision is to actually not play for half the song. Um,
Ha- have you seen Eddie and the Cruisers?
no.
Okay, that's your assignment.
Okay.
Go watch Eddie and the Cruisers. But there's a scene in
Should
Eddie
write
and the
this down.
Cruisers 2 where Eddie he's joined a new band and there's this young guy that's like shredding. But he's like, no, dude, no. And he like grabs the guitar and he just plays this the most beautiful little simple something that it said so much more than the shred. It's pretty awesome. It's a good movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Do you have any
That's my
comments on any of that
um
or things to add
I
to
have
it?
a gripe with the order. I
Okay. Yeah.
think
Great.
I think I would rather listen to off tempo music than pitchy music.
Yeah, I'd
Um,
be opposite on that.
Interesting. Yeah, I pitch is a big deal for me. And again, it probably just comes down to a subjective topic. I think in general, all of that stuff is really good. And that's all stuff that you can pursue as a worship leader and work to achieve. I think you should. That might sound really overwhelming to somebody that's struggling to put together a set week after week and they just picked up the guitar and they know four chords. Um, so speaking specifically to that person, here are some thoughts on how I would start to engage with any of that at all. One is that I would make sure that you set aside some good time to be a band together and to sit with your people and be curious as you're in that space. Because this all doesn't come overnight, right? We are able to communicate with band members because we've sat with band members for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours. And I've
Yes.
sat in front of a drum kit for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours. And I know the different parts of the drum kit because I've asked for the different parts of the drum kit. And so give yourself with all of this, give yourself a ton of grace. We both know worship leaders who are very, very competent at their craft and couldn't do anything on the list that you just said too. I mean, maybe the timing and the pitch and all that. So it's not like this is not like 100% you need to know this, but give yourself a lot of time and space to sit with your band. I think a lot of this actually comes down to culture too. Um, so have be willing to have conversations with your band members, be willing to learn from them, but then also have them try to teach you as well. Like, hey, I liked as you're listening, I like that thing you just did. What do you call that? Or how would I tell you to play that again if that idea came into my head? And he'll say, oh, that's a double stroke roll with a triple feel. Um, which is something I know how to do, which was something that our drummer gave when I was in high school, and sat down and da, 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 da.
And now you
Um,
have an appreciation for it.
yeah, and now and I mean I've never asked him to do that, but now I know what it is. Um, but I think just have a heart, and if everybody can have a heart, that there's no room for ego in this kind of scenario, right?
Yes.
Everybody
Yeah.
needs to come in humbly, and this is way more culture, which is not where I was expecting to go with this. Way more culture than anything else. The culture of your band should be we're pulling for each other. Nobody's a showboat. Nobody's like trying to overrun everybody else. We're all in this together and we're trying to help each other learn. That's
Yeah.
that's how you do this.
Yeah.
And then ideally allow for a culture where people can give feedback and receive feedback. Mm. I I tend to operate on, hey, I'm not playing the drums. There's a reason you're the drummer. If I don't like something, I'll try to communicate effectively, and I'll even
Yes.
ask, okay, how can I communicate this effectively? But I don't try to nitpick. um and I have great musicians around me who will like, hey, that bass piece, did I way overplay? And he's a super humble guy. I can speak into his life, and no, that sounded good, but normally I'm just listening. Okay, generally, is there anything that's sticking out that I need to address? And if the answer is no, then I let it ride. um, in terms of like sound equipment, I think help the best way to learn sound equipment is to jump in and help your sound guys. If you do set up and tear down, or if they need to move something, like be with them. And again, I think this is where it can really simplify. Like, okay, how you're communicating. Do you know what an XLR cable is? Go figure out what an XLR cable is. Like some of the real like basics, so that you can be helpful. So you're not thinking, oh, this is all the stuff that I have to learn, but your heart posture should be, I want to serve people better. I want to be an effective communicator. I want to be an effective, like, if there's something that blows up on Sunday, okay, teach me where the snake is, and I'm going to go try to unplug things at the snake, and help me learn how to do that. Um, so that's kind of at first brush when I think about all that list of things that you just said, how I would start maybe tackling that if you're by yourself.
Yes. Yeah. That I think that's good. One of the things that stuck out to me that you were talking about is just relationship. And I think it's really important, especially in a church context, for the band leader to be thinking relationally about the music. You know, we've talked about musicking and music being a verb, a participatory thing, and ultimately a relational thing. Like it reflects our interactions with one another when we all come together in unity. And there's like, I think there's a purpose that God created with music that just fosters that unity and relationship and love. So when you're leading as a band leader, instead of, and I think you should do some work to have a vision for the set, for a song. But I have served with and seen worship leaders who it's kind of their show. Like they operate like an old school band director, conductor who basically just tells everybody what to play. Like this song is in this style, and here's your music, and you don't deviate from it. And um, in the context that I tend to lead, I don't really think that works very well is in the church. People start feeling like they're cogs in a machine rather than a viable part of what's happening in the creation of the music.
Yeah.
Um, so developing a rapport with the people in the band, and in that, you know, maybe being open to a style change on a song, like somebody else has something that, you know, maybe they're just dinking around and you're like, wait a minute, what was that? What did you just
Yeah.
do? That
Yeah.
was so cool. Actually, it reminded me of the song we're doing. Can we put something like that in it? And you might suddenly find that you've just changed the whole tempo of the song, but it's for the better, right? And now you're actually showcasing that person's musical bent
Mm,
with the whole band, and everybody comes alongside it, you know? So I've had situations where, you know, I think the whole band got stifled because the worship leader had a vision and tried to execute that vision in a sort of dictatorship. And I'm not necessarily advocating for complete democracy in the band that can get kind of chaotic. But as the leader, you know, knowing the personalities and the competencies and the skill sets and giftings and, you know, everything of your band members, um, you know, unleash that punk rock drummer every once in a while. Let the classical pianist like really showcase her skill.
yeah.
Um, let that vocalist have some sort of soaring lead thing in a moment that just draws everybody in. Uh, don't dictate too much. So it's like
Yeah.
you're relationally organizing your band and your songs based on who's in the band. I think that should change depending on if you swap a band member in and out. It's going to need to change the feel of the music, you know,
Yeah.
because it's all
Interesting.
relational. So I think you hit on something really, really good there, and that's a skill to develop over years, probably, of working with people. Is understanding what they're going to be good at, what they're going to fail at, and equipping them and enabling them to like be released to succeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And
know,
just,
I talked about restraint as a skill, and restraint sometimes is, hey, band, we're not good enough to play this song this way. We're going
yeah.
to simplify it.
Yeah.
You know them. You're doing it relationally.
Yeah. That's good. I think three things that could be really helpful in building relationship. One of the things that I really love doing is highs and lows at the beginning of band practice that requires you to take some time. We normally devote the first 30 minutes to just highs and lows and praying together and reading the Psalms together and just taking some real intentional time to slow down. Um, but I know what's going on in my band members' lives. Pray for them. Actually, like take time to pray for them. That's one area that I need to really grow in is like being intentionally in prayer for these people that I serve with. Um, have band parties like quarterly or once a year, twice a year, like semi regularly. Have like get together, do an acoustic week that week, and like hang out with your band. I've said this before, but we have band practice Tuesdays and Saturdays, and so on an acoustic week, the Saturday practice becomes band party night because I know everybody has the time off because they would be at band practice otherwise. Um, so just be real careful because the relational aspect, I think, especially as musicians, we think that comes secondary. That comes second in the music. It's I said it before. God is way more interested in how you treat your bandmates than how you sound on Sunday. Way more interested. And he's way more interested that they feel loved and that they feel supported by you, then that you led them into musical excellence week after week. I'm 100% confident of that. So
Yeah. What if you do that and lead them into musical excellence week after?
you can do both. It's not an either or, but if you
So we
had to
don't
pick
pit
either
the
or,
yes. Yeah.
definitely do the relational one. But yeah,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Totally. Any other things on just general core musical competency? I'd like to riff on music theory just a little bit, if that's okay.
yeah. I think play together, like jam together, improvise together. Um, One of the things that I have done in the past is teach everybody the 12 bar blues, and
Hmm.
then we just go around the room and riff a little bit. And so just try to encourage, like, let the environment be light, let try to foster creativity, um, be a friend to creativity, not a stifler.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Be willing, be open to, hey, I have an idea. Listen to it. Try to work it out. Spend some time on it.
Yeah.
Um,
A-
it could be
And
something
then,
that is totally not your style, and that's okay.
yeah, it should be. Um, I don't remember where I heard it, but one of the books I was reading said, if you like 100% of what's happening during band, you're not doing it right.
Right.
It's not the full body of
Yeah, and then
Christ.
if the
So
church gets that week in, week out, they're just getting you. It's a steak and potatoes every meal, maybe.
I'm not sure if this falls under this category too, but one more quick thought is if you don't like something, if you cannot come up with a better solution, or if you're not willing to have the conversation of how to come up with a better solution, then just let it go. Um, and that's what you're saying. Like I think people can get really frustrated if they have a really picky band leader that can't communicate. And so if you're like, I
Yes.
just don't like what you're saying, it feels more triangles and I want it to feel squares. That's super not helpful to anybody. And so either figure out how to communicate that idea effectively or what is in your head effectively, or just don't say it and it's fine.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
probably my thought.
Yeah. No, I've totally made that mistake. I mean, a lot of this is me speaking from
Oh, yeah,
personal error over the years. I remember
for
in
sure.
college being in charge of a college band, and one week, I'll just confess this. Everybody showed up not having practiced, and I was so angry, just angry. And I can't remember when band practice started, but I kept them there till like midnight, just because I was spiteful. Like, okay, well, you didn't practice. We're going to do it right now. And we're going to keep on doing it until you get it. And you're going to learn your lesson on how to practice. And, I remember the bassist like laying on his back on the stage, groaning about being forced to stay there. And, and so I kind of came to my senses the next morning and personally called each band member and just apologized and asked for forgiveness because I was way out of line.
Yeah.
But I'm speaking these things out of personal experience. This is my experience. I
Yep.
was
100%.
that hard pushing dictator, and I have been that at various times. And it just does not go well. It just does not go well. Learning the lesson the hard way. I'm just speaking from personal experience.
This is something that I've had to do very recently, like within the last 2 weeks. If you if you make a mistake publicly, apologize to the band member publicly, right?
Yes,
The next day, as soon as possible.
totally.
I worded something in a way that wasn't the kindest or the most gracious, and the next morning it's like, hey, but I'm sorry, I should not have said that to you in that way. Um, and so yeah, just as much. Yeah, I like to joke. I burned through I think three of my siblings before I was finally able to keep any siblings in my band. So this has definitely
Siblings
been a
could
long.
possibly be the hardest, man.
Yeah, this has been a long journey.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So one of the competencies, just in terms of theory, I'd like to just talk about that a little bit. Like I said, you don't need a music degree, um, but I do think it's pretty important to know what a key is. So this song is in G versus this song is in C. We had a band leader at one point. Like one of the things about our church is we do run on a lot of volunteers, and sometimes you have a competent, spiritually conscious guy who's pretty decent, and you put him in charge, and then you suddenly realize, like I realized with this guy, he didn't know how to determine what key a song was in, and so he'd tell the band, "Hey, this song's in the key of D," and it was just because the first chord in the song was D. They're like, "No, actually, that's the key of G. See, you have an minor in this song," and so on and so forth. Understand. You need to understand that. What is a key? What chords are in a key? What are major and what are minor? You need to know how to read a chord chart fluently. And I would say even develop the skill to know, like, at least the basic chords in every key and be able to transpose them. So if you're going to transpose from G to C, you need to be able to do that somewhat fluently without having to look it up. Now, you can look it up, and if you do enough prep work and you get your chord charts right going into practice, that's okay. But it's better to be able to know it on the fly. So in the key of whatever, what's the 1, 4, 5, and 6 chords? And then could you transpose that up a whole step, right? And that's just going to unlock music for you in a way that will help you lead the band just super well. Um, Related to that, it's really important in terms of like music theory to help your vocalists when they're leading a song to have the song in the right key. And I would say it's helpful to do that like long before practice night, figure out what the right key is for the song so that the whole band understands what key they're supposed to be practicing in. Cause not everybody's going to have the competency to be able to look at a chord chart and play it in any key. Um, and so it's super, super helpful for them if you have that. But vocalists have different ranges. Men have different ranges than women. If you're going to take a song from the original recorded key and it's a guy singer and you have a woman singing it, you need to know how to help them get to that sweet spot in their voice.
Yeah.
Figure out what their highest note is that they're capable of singing or belting, correlate that with what is the highest note in the song. Figure that out. Okay, so which key would that be then? So if this highest note in this song is whatever, I'll put the key here, and then check it against their lowest note that they can comfortably sing. Um, and if in that key their highest note and lowest note work, then you found the right key. If for some reason they don't and they're really struggling, you may not have the right key. So just knowing how to do that is really, really going to get you a long way. And if you can then get the rest of the band, the chord chart in the right key, and maybe even like a transposed recording, you can do that in a lot of different audio apps like Audacity. You can just change the pitch. Sounds funny, but you can at least practice with it. It's
The
going to help you
worship singer
practice
too.
a whole lot. Yeah, true. It's just going to help you. It's going to help you a whole lot. So learn those things. Case in point, last night at band practice, we had to change the key of a song on the fly to match one of the singer's voices. And we made a decision to change it. And I didn't make myself a new chord chart because I can look at the existing chord chart and then transpose it. In this case, it was 6 half steps, and play it on the fly. And lo and behold, in this band that I've been developing that used to be mostly youth band musicians are now adults, most of them. 3 of the band members could transpose on the fly, and I was so grateful for that because it just didn't take any time at all.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
So learning that it just helps band practice so much.
Yeah. And in the category of you don't have to do this, there's a lot of effective band leaders that don't do this. But one suggestion I would have with keys and understanding music theory is to go look up the Nashville numbering system,
Yep,
or Roman numeral
yep.
system. That's what Travis is talking about when he says 1, 4, 5, 6. What's really helpful is if you can provide chord charts in the Nashville number system with the key at the top. You can have the same chord chart for everybody and they all know what they're doing. If you're on a capo and you're trying to communicate something to the piano player, for example, you can just say, hey, instead of like, I'm playing GCD, but I'm capo 3, instead of like transposing in your head and trying to figure out, okay, I'm B flat and is that an E and F? You can just say, hey, I'm 1 4 1 4 5, and then they know what's happening. And so again, that's a cultural thing, but try to develop a culture where take a night. We've done this. Take a night and sit down and like, okay, what is some basic music theory, and that everybody's on the same page so that you're all communicating well. And I think it just goes to like serving your bandmates well and being able to communicate effectively. I think that's just huge, personally.
Yeah. 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 That number system it's super helpful when like you're in the key of G and you're like, hey, I'm playing a 6 here. I'm not playing a 4 or whatever, and they know, oh, that's an E minor. Or if you're in the key of C and you're like, I'm playing a 6 and they know it's an A minor. That might seem a little bit inaccessible to you if you're hearing that and you're not really familiar with it, but go look it up and study it. It's not actually that hard once you figure out the pattern. It's a very simple pattern across all of the keys, and it's not super hard. And especially if you're on your instrument, like if you're a guitar player, you can actually learn patterns on your guitar for these chords. That will actually help you. You don't may not even need to know the names. Sometimes it's just the numbers and it just works.
Yep. Yeah. And there can be kind of quirk sniffer kind of people in that world, so you don't have to get too far into it. Just develop a common language that your band can use, that you don't make up probably from scratch.
Right. This is the key of
Yeah, yeah.
H. I
I've
call
definitely
this
run into
chord Tim.
some quirk sniffers on the Nashville numbering system. So,
Yeah, and some egos.
yeah, yep.
Some
That's
people
good.
just flat out refuse to operate without it. I'm like, come on, guys, just grow up. It's okay.
Yep. Cool. Do we want to move into? Oh, I was just looking at my notes here. One thing that I think can be really helpful. Um, Actually, I got 3 more things. One is the ear training thing. Sit down with
Yes.
music, try to figure out what key it's in without knowing it. Just anything off the radio, just or whatever, Spotify, just start playing it and start trying to figure out what key it's in. Try to start like picking up riffs and hooks just from hearing. I think that can help a lot. You will find that the longer you do this, um, you will start to pick up some of that stuff pretty naturally. And I don't think I have perfect pitch, but I think both Travis and I can tune a guitar pretty close to 440 hertz
Yep.
standard tuning,
Yep.
because we've been doing it for so long. I might be a couple cents off flatter than Travis, but that's how life goes. But like along that, always make sure your instruments are in tune. Anytime you sit down to practice, tune it up so that you're training your ear to what's true. Um, and try to develop some language around what you're doing there. And then record your sets. A lot of us are streaming them. Go back, and this is maybe the most painful thing you can do, but go back and listen to yourself and actually come up with a specific way that you can grow this week.
Hey,
Um,
if you're struggling with pride, that's a really good way to check yourself. Just do that every single week, and you're just not gonna get full of yourself.
it's pretty
It's so
painful.
embarrassing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a painful experience. But do it. Do, do the hard. It's rough. And then to also commit to getting feedback from other people in the room, trusted friends, talk to your pastors a lot. That's been one of the things I've been wanting to work on a lot more, is to bring my pastors into the worship planning and getting feedback and how it's meshing with their sermons. Um, really trust other voices that are outside of the practice room, and
Yes.
get semi-regular feedback from trusted, guys that aren't going to rip you a new one, but will really speak into people that will speak into your life.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Yeah. Back to listening real quick.
yeah,
Just a tip. Um, when you're listening to the whole band, there's a thing to consider in each individual instrument has kind of a space within the tonal spectrum. So humans can hear
box.
down to, yeah, humans can hear down to like 20 hertz, maybe, and then up to about 20,000 hertz. That's kind of the limits of the human range. Most of us are a little shorter than that. But understanding like the kick drum is down here in the bass frequencies, the bass guitar is right down there with it. Um, there's, hold on, sorry. Had to cough.
Travis is recovering from an illness, and he was fairly confident this wouldn't happen, but here we are.
Just did a couple of sets with, yes. Sorry, get some water.
Yep. I'll pick up your thought. So basically,
Yes.
you want to make sure that you don't have too much going on in one section of that range. And so what can happen is you can have the guitars and the pianos can all kind of sit in that same range, and everybody could be overplaying, and then it sounds really muddy and gross because everybody's kind of in that same spot. I've had
Yes.
songs that I've led where the guitar and my voice are in the exact same spot in the box, and you can't hear anything. And so just you seem to be have your voice back. So I'll let you finish that
Yeah.
off.
Yeah. Just basically the idea is it's like real estate. You want things side by side rather than on top of each other. Because if it's on top, it's like looking down on a satellite map. You like you can't see the basement of a building, you can only see the roof. So if your keyboard and your guitar are in the same space, like right there, right around 600 hertz or whatever, whichever one is loudest is all you're going to hear.
Yep. And
And then the
there,
the problem with the sound guys on that part is they're like competing on those two things, and it's they're just having to turn one or the other. So what I would say is if you're listening to that and you're kind of hearing that, experiment. Have your keyboardist just move their right hand up an octave, or have your guitarist put a capo on and move up the neck a little bit, and see if that doesn't just spread them out a little bit so you can see both of them, or in this case, hear both of them.
yeah, yeah. You do not want a sound guy just cutting out all your lows because you're competing with somebody. You want to actually do that yourself, because that can
Yes.
get kind of nasty. Um,
Yeah.
there's something called an instrument frequency chart that you can go find online. There's hundreds of them. I've always found that's helpful. They'll have like, oh, here's the male vocals and here's the female vocals, and they'll have it on this nice little chart that you can see where everything
Yep.
fits together. And just
Yeah.
understanding that.
Yeah, and
Does
in
a good
the
job.
end, one of the things that can solve if you really do that well and everybody kinda has a spot along that tonal spectrum, is the complaint of "it's too loud" from people in the
Sure.
audience.
Yep.
Because a lot of times that just simply is the keyboardist was playing something at the same place where the lead guitarist was playing, which then coincided with the ride cymbal. Spread them out.
Yep. Yep. That's good. Um, should we move into the ministry aspect of this? I mean, we've been kind
Yes.
of touching on it, but like leading worship and leading ministry, the
Yeah, so
spiritual.
beyond just our musical logistics. Yeah. I would say in that category, I'd maybe start with, something that I think once you develop all these competencies, memorize your songs so that you can then get your eyes up because you have to be able to lead the room.
Yeah, that sounds really scary. Start one song a week. Limit your set to 20 songs, and just memorize those 20 songs and try to get there. Um, I'm. How long does it take you to memorize a song now, Travis? Like a new song?
I usually have it memorized by the time I've made the chord chart
Yeah, I
or
think
sooner.
it takes me like 3 or 4 times of playing through it, maybe 2 or 3, and it's in there. Because what can happen is that you will inherently start feeling, but this is what I'm going to use the term 1 to 4 feels like, and this is what a 6 to 2 feels like, and you'll start to develop like, oh, I know where we're going, and so it's one of those things that forces you from um it allows your body to engage with the music a little bit more and not just like, oh, I'm just reading and here's a C and here's the F and now I'm going to go into the A minor, but you start to like, okay, that's in my head and that's like logged in the back, but now my body knows where we're going and it knows how to handle this.
Yes. And you actually, after over time, you can actually get to the point where you can be listening to the song and you hear those things, you hear those patterns, and you may not even know what key the song is in. But as you're familiarizing yourself with it and then you pick up your instrument, you already know the song because you've learned how those patterns work. And the point of this, the reason for it is like you need to look up from your chord chart. Not everybody can do this, but I try to make sure that everybody has stuff memorized enough that you don't have a music stand in front of you. And I think the reason for it is because you're going to be a better worship leader. Can you, in the middle of your song while you're playing, make eye contact with the back row? Like, can you read, whether or not the congregation is engaged in singing or are they checked out? Is there something happening in the room that you might need to respond to? That's when you've memorized your song and you're competent on your instrument and you've got the whole band there. That's when you're able to read something new in the room and go, oh, we need to sing this chorus again. Or
Yeah.
let's run back to that bridge and let it breathe a little bit, longer than maybe what we had practiced or what the chord chart says. And that you can't do if your face is buried in the music stand because you don't know the song and you're trying to figure out what the next chords are.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge part of worship leading.
It'll genuinely change your life for the better. Again,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Shane Bernard plays with an iPad on stage. There's guys that don't do that even professionally, but like for you, that's Shane Bernard. Shane Bernard's like paid his dues. Don't use him as a crutch. For you, it will change your life. It
Yes.
slowly. It'll be painful. It'll be a painful 6 months or whatever. It will. I firmly believe it will. It will really, really dramatically change your experience as a worship leader for the better if you memorize your music.
Yeah. Yeah. And with your eyes up and not just buried in the logistics with the chord chart, uh, is it's not just like you're able to read the room a little bit, it's you're able to project back into the room, your body language, your facial expressions, your general energy as a person. Um, you can start communicating what the song is actually saying,
Yeah,
you know?
you
So
start
like if
musicking.
yeah, totally. So if you're singing about, the glory of God and his sovereignty and his power, and you're staring at a chord chart or you're really trying to figure out what your next chords are, you look like you're filling out your taxes or something, body language wise. uh, that's what your congregation is going to get, not the
Mm,
bold declaration of God's power, right? But if it's on your face and you're expressing it, like there's a skill set there. It's not about performing. It's more about like congruence. Does my body and my face and my smile and my eyes and my eyebrows, does this actually communicate that what I'm singing about actually means something to me? Because I think the congregation believes your body language before they believe like just the lyrics you're singing.
yeah, yeah. That's, we could just stop right there. Probably. That's beautiful. Um, I think also just in that too, if you are going to call other people to memorize their music, my suggestion would just be rip the band-aid off and misery loves company and just all be miserable
Yep,
together.
totally.
Um, like when we went on a metronome for years, I was pushing for a click track, and how we would do it is I would put it in the drummer's ear, and then I would ignore the drummer, and he would leave very frustrated because nobody listened to him. And what we found is if everybody's on the click track, and there's no exceptions, everybody's on the click track, and we're all kind of a little bit miserable together. And now we've been doing it for 2 years. Nobody even notices it anymore. But we're like, okay, we're all going to be miserable together. We're going to go through this click track thing. We're going to have 3 rough months and then it'll be better. Just rip those band-aids off, have enough relational bandwidth to like, hey, I know you don't like this. We're just going to do it. Just give it a try. It'll make you a better musician. Jump in with both feet and let's just do this thing. And yeah,
Yeah,
it's going to suck.
totally. It'll be hard, but it's actually really rewarding. Because when the whole team has their eyes up and is connecting with the congregation, it's like, like we've been talking about musicking, um, in a very real way, the congregation even can kind of become part of the music team,
Yeah. Yep. Yep. They
right?
should.
You're not treating it like a concert and they're an audience and just a crowd. You're actually part of the congregation, and getting your eyes up off of a chord chart with the right body language. Uh, it's not just to become a better musician. It's you're leading the room.
Yep. Yeah. And another real basic tip is just pick a song with 4 chords, the same 4 chords the whole
Hmm.
way through. And just as a band, if this is your first time doing it, just say, hey, this is the song we're not going to have our music stands, and have everybody like physically put them aside and then lead it that way. And then just keep adding on to that. And it's really scary until you do it the first time. And then you're like, oh, that was kind of cool. So our song is always, we do How He Loves, because it's 4 chords and it's the same 4 chords all the way through. And if I have a new piano player, I'll just have them play How He Loves, and that's like their first success.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
help them succeed.
totally, totally, totally. Yeah, and that's just a general good guideline. Actually, is maybe pick a bunch of easier songs for a while you're learning to do this. It'll pay off.
Yep.
It'll pay off. And you
100%.
might be surprised at how quickly you can learn to memorize songs. It's not that hard. Lyrics can be harder than the music for some people. Some people are backwards on that. But lyrics can be harder, and sometimes people just really, really, real struggle with lyrics. If you can, and you have the tech and the space for it, have a confidence monitor that shows the lyrics that are behind you, but it's in front of you, so you're reading it. Don't get stuck like staring at it for the whole set. But that can be very, very helpful. And one of the reasons for that, I think lyrics are very important for the person leading the song. Uh, because if you're a little bit late on a lyric, the congregation is going to be even later. If you miss it, they're going to really miss it. And you need to be on top of it. You got to be on the mic. You got to know the first word. You got to sing it out. You can't just slip into the line. If you have them memorized, it comes out so confidently, and your goal is to lead. Your goal is to get them to sing. And so the one thing you can do is to confidently sing that line, memorize it, be there, be ready for it, be on top of it. If you're reading it off of a chord chart, you're inevitably going to be late, and you're just simply not going to lead them.
Mm. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that gets in a whole I have I have all kinds of thoughts on lyrics and how much lyrics should be on slides and yada yada, but it's good. Yep. Yep. That's all good. Any other thoughts on just developing the spiritual element of ministering?
Ministering.
Ministering, yeah, ministering in this way.
Yeah, as far as connecting with the congregation, um, I just think you have to all of this reframes like why you are practicing scales. All of this reframes why you want to be on time. I use when I'm coaching people or talking with the bands, I use the term muscle memory or autopilot. I want my guitar playing to be on autopilot so that my brain is freed up to engage the congregation. I just think it's so important to hone your craft so that you're not hindered by the technical aspects of it. I think that's really how I would describe the motivation to become excellent. It's so that you can lead the congregation better. And it's a means to that end. And it's even better when you've brought the whole band, with you in that.
That's good. I just as a anecdote here, if you don't know what an EBO is, that's fine. It's like this electromagnetic thing that you can put on a guitar, and it just makes them sustain forever. And so it sounds a little bit like a violin. An electronic bow is where the idea comes from. And when I was in high school, I bought one and would use it, and I didn't practice it well enough to use it effectively. And it eventually got to the point where my dad was like, "Hey, every time you grab that, I wince and wait for you to mess up." Um, and I I still use it every once in a while, and I think I've gotten better at it, but he still has that fear. And so just to take that beyond, it could be every time I sing the song, I mess up. Every time I do whatever, we crash. Every time, try if you're going to train your congregation to expect something, try to train them to have an enjoyable worship experience, not to like, oh, this is here we go. She's going to grab the mic again and it's going to be bad or whatever. Like, man, we're like, try to train them to, man, I'm going to come in and worship God, and I'm not going to be distracted by what's happening on stage. I'm not going to be distracted by the EBO. I'm going to be distracted by the glory of God, and I'm going to be like infatuated with that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, totally. I have done gimmicky things over the years like that. I
Mm,
would put the EBO in the category of the gimmick,
how dare
though
you?
sometimes it can be used really well. I know, sorry. Uh, that actually may be the one thing I haven't actually tried to use live is an EBO. Maybe I should get on that. Yeah, I've played with them before. They're kind of fun.
There you go. Yep.
Um, yeah, one time years ago, I saw Sigur Rós in concert, and the gimmick there, it's not a really gimmick. He does it with skill. The lead guy plays his electric guitar with a violin bow on a regular basis.
Okay. Yeah.
So I grabbed a violin bow and played part of a set with the violin bow, and it was super fun. Um, but the comments I got were, "Wow, we were just really focused on what you were doing. That was so weird. It was cool, but I realized they stopped singing. Like, I might be shooting myself in the foot by using this thing.
Yep, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's a really good point to drive home is if every time you pull this thing out or you start doing this particular musical thing, people are just waiting for you to screw it up because your competency is not there, just simplify. Just simplify. Do something easier for the sake of your congregation so they can sing.
Yep, for sure. Other thoughts I have on just kind of developing a heart towards worship ministry. I've been reading a lot of good books recently. I've been mentioning them here. I would maybe start with Sing by the Gettys. Worship Pastor by Zach Hicks is really good. Worship Matters by Bob Coughlin. There's a lot of good resources out there to like really start working on your craft of what we're doing here, and it's been a huge blessing in my life. I would maybe start thinking about memorizing verses. One of the things I've been really impressed with Shane Bernard is every time he leads worship, Shane is just like you poke him and he just bleeds scripture. He just
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
just always stuff on his heart. And I think I would love to be that in 10 years, 15 years. I would love to just be like just so pumped full of scripture that you poke me and I just rattle off. There's specific scriptures surrounding worship ministry that I think are helpful. Psalm 33:3 is the play skillfully. Proverbs 22:29 is he who plays skillfully. Colossians 3:16, Ephesians 5:18 through 19. Um, maybe start with some of those of like, okay, here's the spiritual framework of what we're doing and what God has
Yeah.
called us to do.
Yeah.
Um, there's online resources. I know Pablosh did a worship leading training series back in the 90s. They feel a little dated, but they're still good. The solo platform for the worship initiative has some like heart training stuff on it, and it's excellent. Um, and then just look for online community or community in your local congregation, just to like or in your local city, local context. And try to get with other worship leaders and like, man, I'm going to try to get excited about this. Just like we need to stay inspired in the music thing, I think you need to stay inspired in the worship thing. Um,
Yes.
and I have been more intentionally doing that, and it's been an extreme blessing on my life in the last year and a half. So, um, do stay inspired, I guess is the my, my big takeaway here.
Yeah. We should put a list of all of those in our show notes.
Okay. Yeah.
That was
That'd
a
be good.
good list of, and if you think of any more, I'll try to think of some too. Just great books, and resources.
Yeah. Yep. Listen to Joey Landreth if you're a guitar player, and he'll make you weep with his phrasing. It's amazing.
Sometimes I
I
just get discouraged. Like,
like
oh, I'm
literally,
never going to be
yeah, I know.
there.
I don't know how he does it. Literally yesterday, so we've been thinking about like transitions, and he's talking about in his show how he transitions, and he just has these amazing like sonic soundscapes that he takes. And I was like, oh, and I'm like showing this to my dad and showing this to other bandmates, like, okay, I'm gonna try to do stuff like this. So yeah, just like enjoy it. I One last point, and then I'm gonna shut up. Um, Travis and I are not talking about all this stuff from a point of like, oh, this is such a drag. We both genuinely love doing this stuff. And I think there's a way and a heart. Please don't walk away from this episode discouraged. Genuinely, please don't. God's pleased with you through the blood of his son. He's pleased with how you're doing. He's pleased with who you are. Um, he's calling you deeper and farther in, farther and deeper in. Is that what it says in Chronicles of Narnia?
Yeah. The
He
last battle.
he's he's thrilled
Further in and
about you.
further up, or so. Yeah.
Yeah. And keep pushing in, and our hearts are not like, oh man, that's really hard. There's hard seasons in this and hard things that we do, but I hope you can hear that in our voices. I don't think either of us are like, high excitement level speakers, but we both really love this. And we talked for an hour about all this stuff before we hit record. So
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
just we bleed it. We enjoy it. This is a fun thing to do. It's a fun thing to give yourself to.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I was trying to think of if anything else that I have here, just on developing yourself as a musician. Yeah, beyond craft, we've been talking about, how do you develop yourself as a worship leader related to that? And I was thinking about like getting your eyes up and out of the chord charts. Um, just maybe one more point on that. Like, what is the point of that? I said some things, but I think what really the word that would describe what I would want you to be thinking about in that moment is just it's shepherding, right? So you're shepherding your church via music, via your skill. You're looking up from your chord chart and you can see the people in front of you. So you see the exhausted mom, you see the teenager who's exasperated and, maybe just got dragged in. Um, you see the truck driver guy and the programmer engineer, and you see the couple that's struggling, and there's a flock in front of you, and in
Yeah.
John
Yep.
10, Jesus talks about being a shepherd and having compassion on the crowds in Matthew, where he talks about, where they're like sheep without a shepherd. And the reality is God has given the church shepherds, and you as a worship leader are a shepherd. And so in John 10, where the good shepherd knows his sheep and he's known by his sheep, really that's your goal, is to be able to see the congregation and everything that they're in the midst of. What's the posture that they're in? What's going on? They came in carrying things you can't see, and you can't see any of that if your eyes are stuck on your chord chart. You can't lead them anywhere. So really the context for all of this honing of your craft is just to make you a better shepherd. You can lead them in just a much better way if your eyes are up and you're actually thinking about them. And that may be one of the harder things for a young musician to get themselves into the mode of is, can I get myself out of the music enough while still performing it to be thinking pastorally about this congregation and actively caring about them and what they're experiencing in the moment?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's really good. Cool. Well, we should wrap this up sooner rather than
Yeah.
later, probably. Any
Yeah.
quiet 10 thoughts or things you've been chewing on?
I read most of First Corinthians yesterday, which I'm very familiar with. And I just was reading it just to see if there's something new that would stick out to me. And I don't think that I necessarily had anything new stick out to me. I went into the Greek on some parts. But the part that's stuck with me today is from First Corinthians 12, and that's the spiritual gifts passage. You're wondering where that was earlier. Um, sorry, I just dug at you. um, just there's different kinds of gifts. It's the same Holy Spirit distributing them, but there's different kinds of gifts, different kinds of service. God is the same. We're all different. They're different kinds of working, but it's all the same God, and He gives us each different things. Um, but they're all the work of the same Spirit, and so it goes into unity and diversity, and this just beautiful picture that the church is the body. We have all these different parts, and we so tend to undervalue some parts and overvalue other parts. And I think it just hit me fresh, just God's heart for us to not despise the eye because we're the ear, you know? Um, where would the sense of hearing be if we didn't have the ears? Or, where would the sense of seeing be if we didn't have the eyes? And what does that actually look like in the body? I don't know, just a fresh look at it. Um, God's put these parts together. And in the band context, which I think about a lot, your bass player is not the drummer. And there's going to be different giftings. And honestly, there's going to be different people in your bands. I think about this. There's some people that really need that 30-minute sit down beforehand with the highs and lows and buffaloes of your day. And there's others who just really want to get into the logistics of the day, and you're going to need all of those. Um, so I don't know. It's all given by God. It's given by God. And so we're just supposed to value each other. And I want to grow in that. I want to grow in valuing the different gifts more than I do. Yeah. What about you?
It's good. Yeah, we just finished Second Samuel today. Um, and then on top of that, also just finished reading Reclaiming the Psalter by somebody. Um, and I've actually been thinking a lot about confession and uh, j- uh, laments and how they work together. We've had some conversations around that. I don't know if I have anything like real nice and packed and neat to share here, but just recognizing that we live under oppressive systems, and people, our brothers and sisters all over the world, are living under oppressive systems. And um, he one of the points he was making is that the early church was very excited about the day of the Lord's coming, and then in the Middle Ages it got a lot more like dreading the judgment. Um, and we serve a God who's going to set it all right. And even the best king that we have, it's interesting thinking about all this as you read through David's failure and just his like spiral down. And he was the best Israel ever had, was David. And he he was still a scumbag. And we have the new David and the new Messiah, and what a blessing that is to live under his reign. And at some point it's all going to be set right. And it's not going to be a day of gnashing of teeth for us who are in Christ. It's going to be a day of like rejoicing, where we see justice all of a sudden click in a world that doesn't have justice. So
Yeah.
that's where my head's been at. Anyway,
It's good.
cool. Well, thank you guys so much for coming along for the ride. Hopefully this was a blessing to your heart. I enjoyed the conversation, and we'll keep it rolling in the Discord. So with
Yep.
all that,
Yeah.
have a
Come
good one,
join
and we'll
us.
see you next time. Yep.
See y'all.